Okay, here's a good question. Routers and switches and backup devices, do they count as a device? Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they do, right? They are pretty much just part of this plan, because you can't really put an endpoint on a router.
The BDRs we do charge if we support them with any on any level. With the switches and routers, beyond a simple reboot or escalation with some verification notes, we don't do much with them because you're not really buying network engineering, so we don't build them.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another really good question for you guys. Large environments, like let's say they put 50 servers and no desktops on a plan, you know, for simple server support. How would you guys handle that? Do you?
Exactly the same. Well, we don't
exactly the same. Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. I figured, like, I started to ask it, and I was like, you know what, this is not gonna, it's not gonna turn out to be the question I wanted it to be. Okay. But hopefully that answers your question, Jeremy. Let's see here. The cost for the help desk is in addition to the Kaseya agent, Caden, just so that you know. So you would purchase the Kaseya agent, you'd put that on their system, and then you would purchase the help desk and put that on their system. We separated it out for the sole purpose of making sure that people who do not have Kaseya or who have their own server or, you know, who are not using our hosted Kaseya service can also take part in this program because they're separate programs.
Right. We want to be clear on that. You're not required to use Kaseya to use Live Virtual Help Desk.
But you are required to use an RMM tool.
You do need an RMM tool.
Yeah, that's I think one of the most important things. We need that so we know what we're looking at. We know where we're.
And we need a PSA tool as well of some kind. And if you don't have one, then you know we need to work with you to get you on something that we can put the information in.
Wow.
Okay, here's a little bit of a zinger of a question. What makes Live Virtual Help Desk better than Zenith Infotech with Help Desk?
We've got about 50 partner companies right now that could answer that for you. We're not a software company providing support services. We're a support company.
That's a great answer.
And that's all we do. We're simply dedicated to support. Like I say, it's I mean, as a point of note, of course, Zenith looks after only their own software. We don't mind what you're using. We don't care what RMM tool you're using. We're going to help you and use that with you. So it's, I mean, there's a major difference between us anyway, but as Dan rightly points out, the amount of large-scale partners and like Virtual Administrator who have decided to pick us should tell you everything you need to know about our reputation.
Yeah.
Dan, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So a number of the questions I've seen in here all have to do about supporting very specific, you know, pieces of software. You know, we talked about the GlowStream. There's one about QuickBooks, and so I mean, I guess what maybe we need to ask is, I mean, how are those things handled? Are they basically treated like third-party support?
Absolutely.
You know, okay, so
what we would do, I think in a nutshell, the easiest way to describe it is simple. Give us your top 10 if-then situations. We're going to do it. We're going to add it to our wiki, and we're going to do it. If it's beyond what we can find, then let's also include information for that third-party vendors, for the contract number, for the point of contact and phone number, if there is such a thing, so that we can call and get a ticket lodged on behalf of the client. You know, we're going to give you a reasonable endeavor. We're going to do the best we can, but we need a top 10 kind of legacy information from previous support efforts on that software.
Well, that's an example. QuickBooks actually has their own support there, so I mean that's something we could escalate to QuickBooks for.
Okay, so they absolutely. So you'd want them to have like QuickBooks, a QuickBooks support contract, if you want, you know, if they're going to call in for QuickBooks, and what you'll do is just facilitate that for them.
Yeah, like a good question would be like, you know, if you have a client that, let's just use an example with QuickBooks. If you have a client that calls in and they say, help, I can't figure out how to back up QuickBooks.
We're going to help them do that.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
That's a simple how-to. But if they call and they say, our QuickBooks database may be corrupted, I'm not sure we want that liability.
That's fair enough.
And I think that's best suited to be supported by the fine folks at QuickBooks.
Right.
So it really depends on the depth of the question.
Okay.
AutoCAD, was another one. Specific. There's a lot of questions about specific software. ADP for auto dealerships, TAM for insurance agencies. I mean, just on and on. There's just lots of those different things. So I just thought I'd ask a generic generic thing.
From what it sounds like, from what I've gotten from you guys, it sounds like you'll basically take a look at anything, and then if you can't figure out a resolution within the first few minutes or something, then you'll start, like you mentioned, the triage process.
Correct.
Where you'll figure out.
Every one of those environments and every one of those packages that these fine folks are asking about all have about 10 items that probably generate 90% of the tickets.
So if the partner can train you to handle those 10 basic generic items, then there's a good chance you'll be able to handle most of those.
That's correct. And then we're going to take and we're going to add those to our wiki so that we have them in front of us as we deliver our support. If the call falls outside of that scope and we can't find it fairly quickly or handily in an FAQ somewhere, then we're going to escalate to the other company. Again, what we won't do is tell the end user, you got to go call somewhere else, because we've all been through that loop and we don't want to do that.
Sure.
We can't guarantee we're going to fix everything. That'd be ridiculous. But
no,
we're definitely going to give it a go, and we're going to look, and we're going to ask. At the end of the day, this MSP's focused on car dealerships, and he has this ADP software. He knows a lot more about it than we do. Teach us. Give us what you have. How have you been handling it? What are the top issues you see? Educate us, as Chris said earlier, garbage in, garbage out, but also, more information that we can process in that's valuable, the more valuable our support will be.
Yeah, and as one of the guys on the call said, it's basically, the goal is to make the customer feel like they're being taken care of and that the situation is being handled.
Absolutely. That's our whole focus here, is to not let anyone feel like they're not met with kindness and competence.
Yeah. Okay, so here's another good question, switching topics again. One of our guys has a client who likes to schedule support calls. Can you guys handle that kind of thing? If he calls in or if he sends an email and says, I'd like to do a support call at such and such a time, will you call a client?
We do it all the time.
Yeah.
Great. That's great.
We're there to serve your customer. That's what it's all about.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. We say we try to support your clients your way. We really do. And we try to do that by having the flexibility, by, as Neil said earlier, integrating with your company, and behaving as if we are your help desk. We just happen to be physically located somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think it's also, sorry, Dan, I think it's also kind of important to distinguish between NOC services and help desk services, because I see some questions. And by the way, guys, I mean, looking at the screen, almost everybody that's on this call has asked a question at this point. I mean, there's just zillions of them. There's no way we're going to be able to answer them all tonight, but we're kind of trying to pick through and combine them together. We'll get back to you. We'll save the questions and try to get you guys all answers.
We can stay late, Chris. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, why? What the heck? It's like 5.
We're a 24/7 outfit.
Yeah, you're 3
there you
hours
go.
behind us. Right.
I'm also available to answer questions by email for anyone as well.
Yeah, I just want to throw that out there so if nobody gets frustrated. And we do have just a ton of questions in the queue right now. We haven't even gotten to the ones that Dan gathered from you guys earlier.
I know. I've got a good 30, not 30 yet.
Yeah,
15, 20 good questions, but we'll get to that.
My question is, the differentiation between, like some of the stuff is like NOC services. People are saying, hey, well, we respond to tickets that Kaseya generated. And I know one of the things also in working with Neil is, training questions. And I think it's important to, make sure that we're clear about what it is, what help desk services are versus
Absolutely.
NOC services and training. I don't know if you want to kind of put your 2 cents in on that.
Very valid point. We're definitely not a training organization. In-depth training questions need to go elsewhere. We won't be able to deliver a good SLA on those, so we don't sell it at all. As far as NOC services are concerned, from where we stand, responding to alarms from within any RMM tool is definitely NOC and not help desk. This help desk we're talking about today is a reactive help desk to to an incident generated by an end user.
Right, a user.
There you
Right?
go.
Either email, and that at this point that incident is email or preferably voice-based, right? I mean, I think that we're given better support on
Either
voice
or.
than email. And then, do you
Indeed.
see the point of doing a chat at some point, or is that just too hard to manage?
It's not something we're looking at adding at this point, because I'm not convinced we can do it with any consistency. I've done it a lot in the past, and it's never been something that we've felt good about. So
Yeah, it's hard to keep a good.
Can
you
I
almost
just
have to have
throw
dedicated people on the chat window, I would think.
indeed, it seems to fall to the side, because what happens is the person delivering the chat support ends up getting a phone call. So, and then the chat falls in the background, and it's probably not a support we'll ever offer.
Can I just throw something in Dan very quickly? Dan Sturgill there will always say, and I'm surprised he didn't say at this point, but he's probably got a million things going on. It's always good to talk to the end user, because you'll often find out much more by talking to somebody and listening to the tone of their voice and what they're saying and what they've seen than you will if you get somebody on a chat or just in an email. So we always advocate that if we can possibly speak to somebody, we often get a ton more information out of that person, which allows us to be far more effective and expedient in dealing with their issues.
Absolutely. There's absolutely no way to gauge someone's frustration level or to ask all the appropriate questions through text even or email. Voice is the best way to go.
No, I think that's absolutely right, especially for, doing this as a help desk. This is when there is a problem, and you have to handle the problem. So it's the quickest way to do that.
Absolutely, and anyone in this career field understands that what the end user says is a problem initially, very oftentimes is mislabeled or So
Yeah.
good to have some dialogue.
I used to always
Good point, Neil.
joke with my customers that, they always, I always, or not just with my customers, but other people I'd work with, that, by the time they call me, it's because they've already tried to diagnose and fix the problem, and they failed at it. So they're really mad by the time they get in touch with the tech support.
My
So
mouse is broken. Yeah, absolutely. My mouse is broken when indeed its Windows is locked up. So
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
Okay, so